hear it calling every single hour.
Welcome everybody, big welcome to everyone logging in on a beautiful, in Southsea here it's beautiful and sunny, so I appreciate you being indoors and joining us tonight. Some of you may recognise me. For those of you who don't, my name's Daniel. I'm one of the volunteers at Southsea Sangha. So I'm the community Dharma leader for Southsea Sangha, and we've been functioning now for about 6 years. And back in March we moved all our community online, and we are taking a break from this kind of online gathering for the summer. Our Dharma Den, so some of you who are part of the kind of local community here, we run a Dharma Den online on Tuesdays, which is run on Zoom, and those will continue, but these kind of more global Sunday gatherings will be pausing for the summer and starting again in September, and they'll come back once a month. And that's mainly so that we can have a break, and the community, the volunteers can take a deep collective breath, because it's been like a lot of work and it's been beautiful, but it's required a lot of resources. So we just can take a quick break, and you also get to enjoy going outdoors and appreciating the summer weather as well throughout August. So this session tonight, we welcome Singhasri Gazmuri to Southsea Sangha Online, who will be leading tonight's session, Doorways to the Deep. So welcome, Singhasri. So I'm going to say a little bit about Singhasri. They are a Buddhist meditation and secular mindfulness teacher. In 2010, ordained into the Tree Ratana Buddhist community, and currently teach online for a diverse and international community of practitioners. And we are very, very touched to welcome them to Southsea Sangha, and hopefully one day when we're back to being a physical Sangha, we can have you in person too. So you can keep up to date with our online offerings online at these links. Just pushing in the chat bar there. Let me give you a brief overview of tonight's session and format. So it's about an hour and a half long, which usually gives us time for a guided meditation, a Dharma talk, and then sometime near the end, some questions. If you want to ask a question, there's some options beneath both our screens. You can see ask a question. If you can ask a question at any point in the evening, just use that button. And if you accidentally ask a question in the chat, I'll just move it over, so please don't worry, it disappears. That's just me, thank God, in the background. So because this platform is interactive, just like Zoom as well, we have some community guidelines I'm just going to read through for interacting with people on screen and with others who are joining us tonight. And I'll run through these briefly. So these are just agreements for group interactions, which we also use in our physical in-person Sangha too. So try it on. Be willing to try on new ideas or ways of doing things that might not be what you prefer or are familiar with. Practice self-focus. Speak about and from your own experience and attend to your own responses. Do not speak for a whole group and express assumptions about the experience of others. Intent and impact. Understand the difference. Try to understand and acknowledge impact. Denying the impact of something said by focusing on intent is often more destructive than the initial interaction. Practice both and. When speaking, or typing in this case, substitute but for and. This practice acknowledges and honors multiple realities and truths. Blame and shame game. Bow out. Refrain from naming and shaming yourself and others. Practice giving skillful feedback and watch your own tendency to move into positions of power under or power over others. Practice self-love. Move up, move back. Encourage full participation by all those present. Take note of who is not speaking and who is. If you tend to contribute and speak often, consider maybe moving back, take up less space, if you find yourself speaking less, move up and try taking up more. Practice mindful listening. Try to avoid planning what you're going to say as you listen to others. Try to avoid inner comparison or commentary. Try actually listening. Be willing to be surprised, to learn something. Listen with your whole self. Confidentiality. Please take home what you learn, but not the identity of those who shared it now or later. If you want to follow up with anyone regarding something they said in this session, ask first and respect their wishes. Finally, the right to pass. You can say I pass if you do not wish to speak, which might not be relevant to this format. And lastly, the Dharma Tour. So, we moved on to this platform back in March as a physical Sangha, as do many other communities. We had to adapt, and we still have to cover our overheads, which are things like insurance. Luckily, we're not paying rent, but insurance and now all the subscription for these online platforms. And we've been really, really touched by the community support and the Dharma, that's been offered. And we split the Dharma from these sessions with the teachers that we host. And we're really, really pleased that we're able to, in this way, online, offer a platform to teachers that maybe wouldn't have had a platform before, and kind of keep spinning the wheel of the Dharma. So these sessions are freely offered and maintain that because of the support and the mutual aid that comes from the community. And we also openly and welcome invite your support to keep these offerings freely offered to those, to the people logging in tonight and people in the future. If you wish to offer Dharma, you can use the button, the green button that's there. It says offer Dharma and donation. And I'm also dropping in a link here to the PayPal account, or maybe you don't use PayPal, you can use a bank account. So there's that information for you also. And finally, just a little bit of propaganda. Next weekend, there will not be one of these sessions because we're running a weekend retreat with Lama Rod Owens, which begins on the Friday evening and runs right through to Sunday. There's a sliding scale registration for that. There's free registration for BIPOC folk. There's donation registration options for the unemployed, and then there's a sliding scale for people who are employed on low incomes. I'm just going to drop in the link to that retreat there. Okay, I think I've done everything in order for once. I'm gonna, for those of you who used to stay with me, I just kind of make it up as I go along, but I've got a list here. Someone sent me a list, and I'm keeping to it. So that is all from me. I will come back on near the end when we approach the end of the session. And finally, let me just say, it does feel really good to have a haircut as well. Testify to that. I got it yesterday and it feels good. Okay, thank you very much. That's enough for me. Enjoy your evening, and I will come back on later on.
Thanks so much, Daniel. So I'm not used to this format. Thank you, Admir. So I just want to check if my sound's okay, if people can hear me all right. So feel free to tell me to speak up in the chat. So once again, my name is Singhasri, and I'm really grateful to Daniel for this opportunity. I'm not used to not seeing people when I'm teaching, so I'm just trying to imagine all of you out there. And one thing that helps me to do this is to actually begin by feeling the ground beneath me. So right now I'm just sensing into the sensations of the body against the cushions that I'm sitting on, and knowing that under that is the foundation of the building I'm in, and under that is the ground that's always holding me and is also holding you right now. So we could all just do a little bit of connecting with the ground, which means we're connected with each other through our collective connection with the ground. So just a little bit about, I am going to break with the format actually. So we are going to start with a short meditation just to support us all to arrive a little bit more fully in the space. And then I think I'm going to say a few things. I'm a bit like Daniel. I tend to just go with what's present for me in the moment. So I'll say a few things about this theme, Doorway to the Deep, which is a theme I've been reflecting on for quite a long time now. I'll say more about that. And then I'll lead us in a practice that kind of, I often say it's like putting it to a test drive. So whatever I've delivered in the talk, we'll then try and kind of see how it works in meditation. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end. I'd love to hear from you anything you noticed in the meditation, just as a way to workshop it a little bit. And then, of course, if there's any questions about anything that we've done. So I'll make sure to leave some space at the end. So I hope that's all right to just switch things around a bit with the format this evening. So before going any further, I wanted to share with you an exercise that a friend of mine who I also teach with often does, which I find really helpful. So he's trained in somatic experiencing, and I'm personally getting quite interested in somatics as just another support for liberation, just embodiment as a radical act in a world that desperately doesn't want us to be embodied, where there's a lot of distraction and a lot of opportunity to get lost in mental proliferation, to just be able to come back to what's here now in the body as a starting point for getting clearer and clearer about what's actually going on in direct experience. So this is an exercise called orienting. And the invitation is just to take a few moments to just look around whatever the space that you're in right now. Some of you might be outside. I imagine maybe some of you are joining from your phones in a field somewhere or on a beach. Maybe not. Maybe that's just me projecting where I'd like to be. I'm in London, by the way, so I've been missing the beach. So yeah, just taking a moment to look around and just take in as many objects, colors, shapes, in the room around you, moving quite slowly as you do this, really taking in what's here, noticing what's jumping out at you. And then for a moment, just closing the eyes. And similarly, just taking in whatever you're immediately aware of in the physical, internal experience of sitting here now. Or maybe you're laying down or standing or walking, whatever the body's doing. So for example, I can hear quite loudly the fan of my computer. I can feel the body pressed against the cushions. I can feel the fabric of my clothing against the skin. So just noticing whatever's there for you. And then we'll look around again. So one more time, just very slowly taking in the objects in the room around you. Maybe noticing what jumps out at you the second time around as you orient yourself to the space that you're in just now. I find this a very helpful, easy way to support arriving that doesn't require any thinking. So just using the body to support coming into presence. And then once again, closing the eyes, and this time we'll keep them closed. And noticing again anything that can be felt directly internally, sensations in the body just now. And we'll just take a few deep breaths here. One of the nice things about being online in this way is if you wanted to, as you exhaled, you could make any noise that sounds good to you, that just supports you to be here now. So you might want to go like, ah, or So anything that, supports a relaxing down, a softening into the earth. And as we take a few deep breaths here, just noticing once again those points of contact with the ground as you exhale, inviting the weight of the body to drop down through those points of contact. You might even enjoy imagining the earth sort of slightly shifting under the weight of the body as it takes your weight, holding you here. Through those points of contact with the ground, you may sense particular qualities that the earth provides, like stillness or steadiness or safety. If you're in touch with any of those qualities, you could imagine that you're breathing them up into the body through those points of contact, allowing them to permeate the whole body. And then as you breathe out again, softening into the earth. Breathing in stillness, breathing out, dropping down, arriving more fully. And then just taking in the shape of the body just now, so whatever position you're in, just noticing how the body is in relation to space in particular. Rising up towards the sky, or if you're laying down, just aware of the whole of the front of the body opening to space. Aware of space stretching in all directions. And as you breathe in, you might enjoy just feeling the whole body sort of expanding into that space, really taking your place in the royal seat or of your posture or whatever position you're in. Feeling the dignity of that shape just now. And then just very gently, and only if it feels good to you, just beginning to connect with the breath. Subtle movement of the body as we breathe. Inviting the breath to support us to come into even more intimate relationship with what's here now, in terms of sensations, thoughts, emotions. And with each breath, just inviting all of that to be as it is. So just showing up however you are is enough. And in this space of inclusivity and welcoming of whatever's here for us just now, remembering whatever it is that has brought us to this session, which is probably whatever it is that's brought you to practice at all, to Dharma. Trusting that which is within you that's seeking the way to freedom. Often for me, I feel this in the heart center, so if you'd like, if you find it helpful, you might want to just maybe take a deeper breath, place the hand on the heart, just bringing a sense of touch and contact to yourself. Holding yourself in love and appreciation for the efforts that you've made to be here this evening and to show up to practice with others. And then just taking a few breaths to connect again to space, allowing in sounds all around you, aware of the ground beneath. And we'll listen together to the sound of the bell. So I'm going to say a few things for probably about 20 minutes, and then we'll have another meditation, a bit longer meditation. So Doorway to the Deep. I was meeting with a friend of mine last year who's a free diver. So she, it's quite, maybe many of you live by the, oh, what's this? That's a good question. Thanks for asking. So this is just what people ordained in my tradition receive. So it's referred to as a kesa, which is Sanskrit for robe. So it's like a mini version of a robe. So yeah, this is just an indication of my commitment to my going for refuge, and was given to me at the same time that I received the name Singhasri, which means, so Singha is lion and Shri is radiance. So Singhasri means she who has the radiance of a lion. And it's got the three jewels, so Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, in a sort of circle of flames. So to never forget the refuges. Hope that sufficiently answers your question. So doorway to the deep. You're welcome. So yes, she swims out into the sea without any gear, just her and her swimsuit, and takes a deep breath and then dives. And she's trained herself to be able to hold her breath long enough that she can stay down there for quite a long time. And so she was telling me about this beautiful term that freedivers use called the doorway to the deep, which is different for each of us, depends on all sorts of conditions. So everyone's doorway is at a different depth. But it's a place where basically you've dived deep enough that you're no longer so buoyant that you get pulled to the top, and you're not yet so heavy that you get dragged down. So the feeling of being in that place is one of like hanging in space, in a kind of weightless space, and that apparently, I don't know because I've never been there, but this is how she described it. You can move in any direction without there being any friction, which I find deeply interesting. And I love metaphors and symbols, and I like the idea of relating to life, practice, experience, growth, change on a mythic level. So as soon as I heard that description, I thought, oh, that's such a beautiful metaphor for well, I think for me personally, it's what I think I'm trying to do in my practice. So, wanting to get to a place, or hoping for a place, or imagining a place where there's not so much tension. It's important, well, for me anyways, it's important to be careful about that wish, because I also believe that in practice, tension is very important. We need some tension to engage with. And one of the things I've been working on, there's a activist from the States. You may have heard of her. She's wonderful. Her name is Adrian Marie Brown. She's a queer Black activist. She's written a book called Emergent Strategy, was her first book, and her second book's called Pleasure Activism. And good. So there's some of you who've heard of Adrian. Wonderful. And she's trained as a doula. So that's someone who supports women in birth work. And she gives this beautiful description of some of the things that she's learned in birth work. And one of the things that she says is that she learned how to engage with the tension without indulging the drama. And again, I thought, oh, that's a really good description of what at least I feel like I'm trying to do in my life. So the drama is going to keep happening. I'm going to keep playing out my habits, and they're going to keep causing me and other people suffering. And I'm hopefully waking up to that more and more, and then through practice changing that slowly. But there's a tension there. There's a tension because I have ideals. Like I have the idea of where I think I'm headed. I have Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that I bring to mind who embody certain qualities like compassion, wisdom, fearlessness. That I'm hoping to emulate. And I have, so that's the ideal, right? Which is important. We need to, it's important to have this idea of where we think we're headed. But then I also have what's happening now, which sometimes can feel very far from the ideal, especially if I'm deeply caught up in some sort of drama. So I love this thing of, can we engage with the tension of life, which, as long as we're embodied, there'll be tension without indulging in the drama. So getting caught up, in the waves, to use the doorway of the deep metaphor. So, we've got it's a very traditional Zen image, isn't it? That our minds are like these very frothy, wavy oceans. And all the waves, they're of the same substance, which is of the mind. But we get caught up and we only see the waves, and we get caught up in the content of the waves, and we make a self out of the waves. And we forget that there's this whole deep, unfathomably deep ocean below all that, and that it's all of one substance of mind. So yeah, so I love that thing of engaging. Can we engage with the tension without indulging in the drama? So this idea of the doorway of the deep being this place where, to quote a beautiful Mahayana sutta called the Purabheda Sutta, it's a completely. If you're at all familiar with the Mahayana, you'll know that their suttas are often really out of this world. There's a lot going on. Usually, the Buddha's teaching, hundreds of thousands of different kinds of beings, and they're all listening attentively, and it's all very kind of multicolored, technicolored. So this particular sutta, the Buddha recreates an image of himself, and he asks himself the question of what are the qualities of a sage or of an awakened being? What are their qualities? And there's one line from that sutta that I was on a retreat once, and the sutta was being read out loud during meditation, and this line just went straight in. It cut through whatever defilements there are of the kind of mundane mind, and just went straight to the heart. And so the line was, there is nothing in them, or in their experience, there's nothing in them that they cling to as theirs, and there's nothing in them that they reject as not theirs. So a sage is someone who, no matter what's happening in their experience, there's nothing that's clung to, accepted, attached, clung to, or rejected. So the whole kind of game of acceptance and rejection that we're so used to as human beings, how we create a self out of what's wanted and what's not wanted, what's welcome and what's banished. That whole game is just stopped. That we're not playing that game anymore. And of course, immediately, so for me in that moment, just to finish the story about that retreat in particular, what happened was I heard that line, and immediately, and it was probably only like a split second. I just flashed into oneness, really is the best way I can describe it. I just sort of flashed into the sense of being completely connected to everything and everyone in the universe, and no sense of separation at all. No sense of like a boundary between me and everything else. And then, of course, very, very quickly, that kind of shut down. So there was a moment of whoa, and then it all shut down. But it was very, very significant for me because it was an opportunity to see the connection between when we stop doing that whole wanted and unwanted thing, kind of dissecting life and other people into what's welcome and what's banished. As soon as we stop doing that, what's left is interconnectivity and non-separation, and how delightful that is. So there's a joy that comes in that clear seeing and knowing. So that was what came to mind when my friend told me about the doorway of the deep. I thought, oh, that's similar. It's like this place where there's no more tension, and in a way, choices become we become free in terms of choices, because we're not making choices anymore based on objectification or utilitarianism. So things are no longer just there kind of in service of us in a particular way. That's actually quite violent, even in very subtle ways. We do that to ourselves. We do that to our own thought processes and experience. So that's where this idea of doorway of the deep came in. And in terms of a mythic level, I just want to make a connection to this time, to COVID and coronavirus and Black Lives Matter. So we're in this time where, as Arundhati Roy said, the pandemic is a portal between one world and the next. And as soon as I heard her say that, that word portal, it reminded me of doorway, gateway. In Buddhism, we have the idea of the bardo, this in-between place between what's died, what's fallen away, the old way of being, of showing up in the world, of doing things, and the newness, which is yet to emerge, yet to completely manifest. So these places, these doorways, these bardos, these portals, are very uncomfortable for the, you could say, for the untrained mind, because there's nowhere to rest. We've let go, or we're starting to let go of what's been, the familiar, the comfortable, the known, and we're moving towards the unknown, the unfamiliar, and inherently in that movement there's discomfort. So I appreciate Arundhati Roy bringing this mythic element to the experience that we're in, this global experience of pandemic and lockdown and isolation and suffering, so much suffering, particularly on the part of our of BAME folks, Black and Indigenous people of color, who are disproportionately affected. So we could, and I'm speaking quite personally as well just now, we could fall into, and I have over the last 4 months fallen into quite dark places, places of depression, sadness, incredible grief, anger, a lot of anger, particularly because I'm also American and I've been involved in social justice work for a long time. So after seeing the atrocious murder of George Floyd, I personally went to, I got more angry than I've been in quite a long time, but it was good for me as well. It was good for me to tap back into that level of rage in myself because it was motivating. But I had to remember, I can't let myself so this coming back to this image of the doorway of the deep, that letting myself give in to such strong emotions is like letting myself get pulled down, going too far to the depths and letting myself get dragged down. And that what I needed to do was remember the height, remember ascension, remember what's on the other side of indulgence or suppression. So whether or not I'm indulging in my mental states or suppressing them, that there's a middle way above and between those two states. And that place is full of infinite potential. So connecting with everything that's happening in the world from a place of, okay, actually, now is the time for everyone to double down in their practice. If you've been introduced to the Dharma, your job right now is to get on with it. We need people who are awake and ready for this work yesterday. So let's all just keep going. Let's get on with waking up. And let's make it, again, another quote, and I'm sorry, maybe one of you will know who it is. I'm very bad sometimes at remembering who said what. But waking up, so irresistible that everyone will want to do it. Yeah, like everyone in the planet will be like, what are those people doing over there? We want to do that. That looks so joyful and liberative. Everything else will seem so, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Tony Cade, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Making the revolution so irresistible. It's something like that, isn't it? The quote, making the revolution so irresistible that everyone will want to be a part of it. So then it's like, okay, so then I need to, this thing of, okay, so let's look at it on a mythic level. We need to wake up. We need to, going back to birthing, we need to birth this new world and we need to do it together. And there's lots of really good people working on that on lots of different levels. So as Dharma practitioners, what's our role in that, or one of our roles? Because I think we probably all hold lots of different roles. And for me, it is this thing of how can I create within myself the feeling of the world that I want to feel when I go out into the world. Yeah. So how can I embody within myself all of the qualities that I also want to help create out there in the world? Particularly around, for me, a big theme that's been coming up lately has been nonviolence, which isn't surprising because in one way, we've gone back, haven't we? I've been joining, there's a teacher in the States named Spring Washam. Some of you might be familiar with Spring. I've been joining her. She's been doing these Sunday evenings. Actually, they're on right now on Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. And she's been doing this whole connection between Harriet Tubman and the Buddha and how we can draw strength and inspiration from Harriet's story. And oh God, I just completely lost my train of thought. But there's something important about Harriet Tubman. Hang on, let me just take a deep breath. yeah, so she's been encouraging us to think in terms of that. In a way, the pandemic has turned back time, and we're like back in the civil rights movement, aren't we? Like all of a sudden, all of those themes are really front and center again. People are starting to quote Martin Luther King Jr. again, sometimes in really annoying ways. They only pick and choose the quotes that they like and forget the other stuff he said, maybe the stuff that feels a bit too edgy or more radical. But yeah, so we're hearing, it's like in the atmosphere, and this word nonviolence. And last week, one of the things that we were reflecting on was, how do you really embody nonviolence when there is threat out there? Like the world isn't necessarily a safe place, and for some people less safe than others. So how do we carry within us this, deep desire to be of service in a way that doesn't cause harm to ourselves and others, while also needing to have good boundaries to protect ourselves and others, possibly even to put our bodies on the line. If it ever came to that, would we be up for that? That was one of the things we were exploring. And I had a moment in one of the groups, we were in small groups, where I actually had to admit that I didn't know whether or not I would be willing or able to put my body on the line, that I'd like to think that I would, but I couldn't say for sure what would happen. And it was very helpful because someone else in the group reflected back to me, well, if you're practicing every day and you're cultivating, you're working hard to cultivate a mind that is free from greed, hatred, and delusion, then I would hope that in that moment, all the fruit of that practice would come to bear in that moment. And I thought, oh yeah, I can really rest in that, actually. I can have confidence in that because I've seen that before. I've seen myself I've been practicing now for more than 20 years, and I have seen times when I actually responded to what was coming at me in moments of intense pressure in my life in a way that was totally new and surprising to me, actually. And I knew in that moment of responding that it was because of my practice, that it was a moment of fruition, that all of those hours of sitting on the cushion, turning towards neutral sensations in my belly, and sometimes questioning, what is the point of this? And why should I sit with this numbness or this tingling or this pain or whatever else my teacher is drumming on and on about me to just stay with, to keep abiding with, stay curious about, notice the changing nature of, notice the movement of the mind towards or away from what's happening, notice the habit to want to distract, notice the habit to want to get frustrated. How is that? All of that unpicking of experience coming to fruition in a moment, and being able to then be in that moment with full presence and love, actually. So I do know it's possible. So that was very helpful when that person in the group said that, because I could connect again with both my bodhisattva vow and also my what's already happened. Like you're here, you're on this call, so I'm assuming you're already practicing, even if just this is the first, I don't know if anyone's here for the first time, it's the first Dharma thing you've ever done, but even that means that something has already happened in your life. That means that you're on the path to liberation, and we can trust that. We can trust maybe in our darkest hours, we can trust that we've already done a lot. So I'm going to have some water now because I've said a lot and I want to pause. I think before we meditate, which I would like to do soon, I just want to make sure that check if there's any clarifying questions about anything that I said, and then we'll meditate, and I'll lead us in a practice where we'll do just what I was just describing. So we'll drop into what's here now in terms of sensations, and we're just going to watch how the mind kind of moves around and through and towards and away from what's here now. And I'll point out a few things that you might get curious about. So any clarifying questions before we do that? Feel free to drop them in the chat box. Or there's also a little thing, there's a button for asking a question. I'm not sure if that's the same as the chat. Okay, so I'm assuming there aren't any questions then if you haven't put them up yet. So let's go ahead and sit or lay down. Yeah, so put your body in any position that feels good to you just now. Closing the eyes when you feel ready. And once again, maybe just taking a few deep breaths, letting all the words that I've said fall away. Feeling the ground once again, the earth holding us here. Just taking a moment to notice once again the shape of the body, the dignity of the posture. The stillness of the ground and the spaciousness all around you as resources in the practice that you can always return to at any time. And we'll just spend a little bit of time now connecting with the breath, aware of all of the changing sensations and movements as you breathe. Noticing where you feel the breath in the body and how it is, the quality of the breath. And here, depending on how the mind is just now, you might have to apply a bit of effort to redirect the mind towards the breath if you find yourself getting distracted in any way, and reattending to the sensations there. And we'll just spend a little bit of time noticing sensations in all the different sense doors. So beginning with sound, just noticing any sounds arising and falling in your experience. And as we do this, you might also get curious about how the mind naturally wants to label sounds and also possibly decide whether they're welcome or not, pleasant or unpleasant. So just noticing that if you are aware of how the mind is receiving sound and reacting to it. How is that? So here we're not trying to correct anything, we're just getting curious about the feeling, tone of sounds, and whether there's any habits of trying to cut off or perhaps welcome particular sounds. And then doing the same thing with visual sensations. And here, interestingly, you may want to open the eyes. It's up to you. You can keep them closed. We're not needing to put in any effort here, so we're just allowing any visual sensations, even with the eyes closed, to be there. Aware of light, shadow, shapes, movement. And if the eyes are open, same thing, just maintaining a soft focus and allowing whatever's arising in the visual sphere to be as it is. And then again, just noticing how the mind wants to do something with that experience and what is it that might be coming up as a habit there. And we'll just spend a little bit of time with smell and taste. They're both connected and quite subtle. So as you breathe in, noticing any smells, and again, whether they're pleasant, unpleasant, maybe neutral, and also aware of taste in the mouth. Maybe there's a residue of something you've been eating or drinking recently, or just the taste of the inside of the mouth. How is that? Maybe there's a habit to want more to be going on here. What's it like to be with smell and taste just now? And then connecting with the breath as a way to support you to come into relationship with physical sensations in the body. At first, just connecting with sensations of breathing, and then as you feel able to, broadening out to include sensations across the whole of the body. Things like tingling or warmth, pressure, tightness, softness. Just noticing what's here, and also noticing whether the sensations are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Meaning they don't really feel pleasant or unpleasant, or maybe there's numbness there. And noticing what the mind wants to do with those sensations. How is that? And if at any point you feel yourself getting lost or distracted, feeling free to come back to the breath or to the sense of space all around you or the ground below. These are all resources that can support us in the practice to come back to presence. You could even open your eyes and do a bit of orienting like we did at the beginning of the class, and then begin again with the breath. And then broadening out to include the whole body, sensations coming and going. Noticing how they are. So I just want to invite you now, if there's anything pleasant in your experience, any pleasant sensations in the body just now, the invitation is to direct awareness to those sensations and just dwell with them. So recognizing and dwelling with any pleasant sensations and noticing how that is. Maybe even letting yourself enjoy those sensations. Could be as subtle as a bit of tingling on the very edges of the skin, or maybe a sense of warmth in the belly or the heart. Or even the absence of pain in a place that usually or sometimes has pain. So a little bit of time just dwelling in and allowing yourself to enjoy pleasant sensations. and noticing what comes up when you set that intention to do that. So it may be that there's a part of you that wishes that they will continue, or a part of you that's afraid to let yourself enjoy those sensations because maybe they'll end, or maybe you're confused. So just noticing what else happens with this instruction. Letting ourselves enjoy pleasant sensations and noticing how that is. It could just be something really subtle, like a sense of calm or peace in the body. Familiarizing yourself with whatever is here that's pleasant, that feels good. And then also, so you can stay with pleasant sensations. And then also, if there's anything unpleasant or painful, just noticing if there's any physical tension or resistance around that particular sensation. The invitation here is to perhaps take a few deep breaths. You could imagine breathing into that place in the body and just leaning in with tenderness, compassion, playing around with what it might be like to come into a relationship with these painful sensations with perhaps a little bit less rejection, more curiosity about what's actually here when we turn towards and lean into these sensations. If you find it helpful, you could even place a hand there just to bring a sense of contact and touch. Lovingly attending to anything unpleasant just now, anything painful. And if it becomes too intense or overwhelming, you can always go back to pleasant sensations or the other resources like breath, space, ground. Okay, so starting to broaden again to include the whole body breathing, sensations coming and going, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, rising and passing in a broad, open, warm, non-judgmental awareness. And here we're going to begin to turn now towards the mind itself. So just noticing the quality of your mind just now. So perhaps there's a lot of discursive thoughts there arising and passing. Or it may be a bit more still and quiet, or somewhere in between the two. So just noticing, how is the mind just now? And in the same way that we were relating to sounds, visual sensations, physical sensations, you can also relate to thoughts, emotions, images, memories, anything arising in the mind. So the invitation here is to simply notice. And notice if there's any habits to get caught up in whatever's there, or to want to push it away. So here it can be helpful to connect with some of the qualities of awareness, like its boundarylessness, openness, like the clear blue sky, or the fact that it can be a bit like a mirror, simply reflecting what's here with clarity, luminosity. And also its deep sensitivity, so awareness is utterly receptive to whatever enters, receiving it all, just as it is. So we're just playing around with the possibility that in this open, clear, sensitive space of awareness, thoughts and emotions and other objects are allowed to simply arise and pass away. As are whatever habits we might have and how we relate to them. Also allowing those to arise and pass away. No need to make a self out of any of it. So for the last few minutes, I just want to invite you to drop any effort that you're making. You might want to take a few deeper breaths, lean back a bit in the posture. You could put the hands palm up in the lap if that feels good to you. You might even enjoy just opening the eyes and maintaining a soft focus. We're just going to sit for a minute, just letting the totality of life just now flow through us, feeling the energy of that. So feel free to move or stretch in any way that feels good to you, or maybe there's a part of your body that's calling out for a little squeeze or a rub. So as we transition out of the meditation, I'd be really interested to hear from anyone anything you noticed there. And it's good to just, for these things to just come out fresh without thinking too much about it. Sometimes if we think too much about it, we might actually dismiss something that we noticed because the rational brain comes in and tells us it's not important, but it might actually be really important. So try not to edit yourselves too much. And Daniel said there was the possibility that if you wanted to, you could actually come on screen and have a dialogue with me so I could see you. Now, I don't know if anyone's feeling particularly brave enough to do that. But if you are, I'm not sure how you let Daniel know that, but I'm sure somehow, magically, maybe he could let you know how you let him know that. And if not, you could just drop it in the chat. So both of those options are there. Oh yeah, he's saying type your request here and he can fix it. So yeah, what did you notice during that meditation? I'm very curious to know. Hi, Eva. Yeah, distracted by thoughts. Yeah. Thank you for admitting to that. I think it's quite common. So, yeah, how did you know you were distracted? Ah, great. So Daniel's saying he felt a lot of relief personally. And Mike, he had a moment of awareness, feeling as if I am what I feel, as I broadened my thoughts towards the end. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so yeah, feeling the breeze of the wind coming through the window. Great. Thank you, Paul. So yeah, so I'm interested. I'll just go back to what Eva was saying, because it's quite interesting, this thing about noticing distraction. Because one thing that I find really fascinating about this, and I'm speaking from personal experience, so I feel quite humbled by this. So every time I catch myself doing it again, which is that we've got this. Some of you are probably familiar with the neuroscience of this, but we've got an inbuilt negativity bias, which is helpful in terms of like helping us to scan our environment for threats, but it's not so helpful when it comes to meditation, because what can happen is we focus on the thing that's like wrong or that we shouldn't be doing, rather than noticing what is going well. So just want to say, and again, this is from personal experience, as soon as we notice distraction, it means that there's awareness there. Yeah, so there's a part of us that knows that we're thinking. So in that moment in the meditation, when you wake up to distraction, the traditional teaching is to go back to the breath. But we can also pause and just appreciate the luminosity that's available to us in that moment, the clarity of the awareness that sees the thinking happening and knows that that's what's happening, rather than focusing on like, oh my God, I can't believe it, I got distracted. So that's just one way we can work with that, and it supports the mind. Again, if we think of habits and karma as like this ship that we're trying to turn, it's supporting the mind to sort of rest in and familiarize more with the awareness and the knowing rather than the content. Yeah. Again, it's like the difference between the waves on the top of the sea, which we're usually there. That's where we usually hang out and what we usually identify with, versus what's more available to us when we can drop into the depths, the whole ocean of awareness and of mind that's available to us in any moment of awareness. Okay, and then, yeah, interesting, this thing that you said, Mike, about awareness, a moment of awareness, feeling as if you are what you feel as you broadened your thoughts towards the end. Yeah. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, but my sense is that, I don't know, maybe, is there something about like, there's just, we often identify so much with our thoughts that we forget about everything from here down, but there's also all of this information happening on the somatic level. So maybe for you it was something about like, oh, that's also me. Like, why privilege the thoughts over what's happening in terms of feelings in the body, which is quite interesting. That's also something interesting that we could explore in our meditation practice. What sensations, thoughts, emotions, what aspects of our experience do we privilege over other aspects, and why is that? And how can we begin to support a more broad, open awareness that doesn't privilege anything, actually, which means that everything gets privileged somehow. That's also got, it could be a metaphor for social justice right there as well. And then, yeah, Paul, thank you for your beautiful, you've written like a poem for us. I could really feel the light breeze of the wind coming through the window. That feels to me like you could be a hermit on a Chinese mountain somewhere writing us that poem. It's beautiful. Okay, so thanks, Mike. Yeah, you felt as if the sounds, feelings, and the breeze on your skin all came at once. Yes, that does make sense. Yeah, so thank you for that. That's so what you're touching into there is this beautiful aspect of reality, which is simultaneity. Yeah, the simultaneous aspect of awareness. So everything is arising at once, isn't it? It's not like we can, when I led us through that meditation, I did sort of break up the senses, but that's not actually how experience happens. You can't actually find a boundary between, like right now, the sound coming out of my computer and the image of the computer is one experience. It's not, I can't make a boundary between them. So yeah, I appreciate you naming that. Yeah, so the sounds, and the sensations of the breeze on the skin, all there simultaneously as one rich, full experience that's available to you. And that could be the beauty of that, or the promise of that, of seeing that so clearly, is that you could be that open all the time to everything that's arriving in any moment through the six senses. Beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate that. Anything else anyone noticed out there? Any clarifications around anything I've said? Questions before we close? Okay, well, I want to thank Eva, Mike, and Paul for being brave and sharing a bit about your experiences in the meditation. Oh, right, ask a question. Sorry, I didn't think to look there. Yeah, so thank you to those guys. And yeah, I've just been poked by Daniel that there are questions. So let me just read these. Yeah, good question about the radical act of becoming embodied. Yes, good. It's a big question. So what can I say about this? Well, we're, in a way, what's happened over the last, who knows when it began, the last millennia, is there's been forces, like patriarchy is a force in the world, right? And these forces, in a way, have one of the ways that they work is to cut us off from the earth, first and foremost, I think, and then from each other. And in that cutting off, also from embodiment, yeah? So from everything from here down. So, so by becoming embodied, we return to that which is wild, which is, you could say, feminine, which is of the earth, of connection. And in that returning, yeah, it's hard because it's so unknown and unfamiliar to us. And also, we know now more and more of the research around trauma is showing that it can be very, very difficult for those of us who've been traumatized, and I put myself in that category, to come into relationship with the body in a way that's helpful. So we have to be very skillful in how we do that in a way that's very kind to ourselves, and that we're using the appropriate amount of effort, that we're learning how to back off and do other things that are more helpful when it becomes overwhelming, that we maybe get help with that if we need it, through therapy or other kinds of somatics, like yoga or body work. But the main point I was making, which I think you've gotten because you mentioned the connection between social justice and interrupting and dismantling systems of oppression, is that part of how we stay oppressed is that we never drop into the wisdom of the body. So all of this wisdom is not available to us. It's telling us that there's something deeply, deeply wrong and out of balance. And if we were really able to go to those places within ourselves and feel into that, we would have no other choice but to agitate. Yeah, we'd have no other choice but to kind of demand a different world than the one we're living in now. So that's a very short answer to that question. I could write a whole book on that question. But I appreciate you asking it. And I hope I've given you enough to go on there for now. How do we make the revolution more irresistible than remaining in delusion and spaced outedness? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. For me, the answer that keeps coming up, and it's one that I also find very, very mysterious, is the word joy. Yeah. So, giving people enough of a taste of liberation that they see how much more joyful it is to be so whole. Yeah, to come into back into relationship with ourselves and each other and the earth is a holistic act. And in that wholeness, we find the very happiness that we thought we would find through all of the other coping mechanisms and strategies of delusion. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you convince people. I think that in a way, as Dharma practitioners, we just have to do it and trust that we're embodying something, and that actually will draw, like that draws people to you when you embody something. You know, you're manifesting a different way of being in the world that then people are like, well, what's going on over there? I want a bit of that. Yeah, that's one way. That's one way. I think there's as many Dharma practitioners as there are on the planet right now, are as many ways that we can make it irresistible. Yeah. So yeah, find your way as well. Find your way to bring joy into the world. That, like, if you're doing the thing that brings you joy, that will spark other people to want to do the things that bring them joy. And if we were all doing the things we ought to be doing, then everyone would be happy, right? I know it sounds so simple. I don't mean to make it so pat. Anyways, I think I'll stop there. Thank you. Because I'm aware of the time, and I know Daniel wanted to say a few things at the end.
Hey, thank you so much. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you. And yeah, we could have a dialogue about those things for hours, no doubt. And maybe we should do that one day. But yeah, we've run out of time this evening, and thank you to everyone who kind of, dialed in tonight, and Singhasri too, for supporting our community and continuing this kind of offering that we have. So we will be taking a break over the summer, so that there isn't another session tomorrow, next week, until September. But this time next week, we will be running a retreat with Lama Den, and so I encourage you to check that out. The link is on our website, which is southseasangha.com, and you can join Lama Den and myself for 3 days or 2.5 days of practice. If you haven't already, please consider supporting the platform, our community, and so we can offer some support to the teachers who come here and offer their time and practice and teachings. This kind of radical, we're talking about radical acts, this kind of radical mutual aid, it really kind of disrupts the transactional model, which we're also used to. And in doing so, we've managed to sustain our community for 6 years now. So thank you so much again to Singhasri and to everyone. And these recordings will be on our YouTube channel. Oh my God, I've got one more list to drop in. I'm not linear at all, and I always forget these things, but I have a list, so I'm going to honor it. So if you want to catch up with any of these recordings, any of the teachers we've had, you can click on that link and you can enjoy them to your heart's content. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, and take care, be safe, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, take it easy, everyone. Bye.
Go well.